their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Yeah, I mean, he's an underrated pitcher, very good. A lot of times pitchers, when they get away from that ballpark in Cincinnati, they improve. And he has been excellent lately, so I think it's a good move for the Twins. They're finalizing this deal. They've been looking for starting pitching since spring training. And look, they've gotten to first place and basically stayed there the whole season with kind of a makeshift rotation. So I think anybody they add is a plus. And this will be the second deal that they have made with the Reds for starting pitcher Sonny Gray being the first.
Okay, welcome in, Mackey and Judd here. I got a question for you guys as baseball looks to connect with a younger audience. Is Jeff Passan the only baseball insider that's under the age of 83? All due respect to John Heyman and Tim Kirkchin. I mean,
John Paul Morosi is young.
That's true. Morosi.
And he does
he's
some
not,
stuff.
I wouldn't say he's young.
He's
younger than you.
Yeah, he's probably in his 40s.
But is there a
40s?
Shams? Is there someone out there? You know, the NFL has all these young whippersnapper PFF types out there, right?
No, probably not.
Baseball has a bunch of John Heymans. The Twins added Sonny Gray.
They've been talking to the Reds.
Well, you know what the stupidest thing was? The fact that MLB Network got rid of Rosenthal, who, look, I know rubbed the commissioner the wrong way because he ripped him.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Which is just a bunch of crap. But Ken Rosenthal is likable. He's really good. And, he's good on TV.
Yeah,
I think he's good on TV.
He wears bow ties and he's older, too. Yeah. So I'm just looking who's the Sham? Who's the Shams? Is it Passan? Maybe Passan's the Shams.
That's Passan.
Yeah.
It's Passan.
But
that's it.
Yeah, I'm not really focused on this part. I'm fine with old folks because I'm old myself.
Yeah. Well, you're a young spirit. Let's talk about the Twins. Now that we've had 24 hours to digest the most active trade deadline, at least in the last, probably ever, but for sure since they became relevant again in 2001. So let's go to Judd here. They lost last night, of course. They came out and put up a dud. But what are you, now that you've had a day to think on this, we did our emergency recap episode yesterday. How is it landing with you after a night's sleep?
You know what? I remain impressed. They essentially did something that, going back not just through the Falvey regime, but years and years and years, they have not done. They pounced on an opportunity, and it will now have to obviously play out, but they absolutely pounced on an opportunity and got pitching that is not like, it's Sergio Romo. Oh, it's Sam Dyson. So I remain very impressed by a commitment to looking at a situation and saying it's a bad division. We're in first place. And while your closest competition basically did nothing or very little, you went out and made impact splash moves, not just to make them, but at spots, bullpen and starting rotation, that you needed help. And so I'm hard-pressed to scoff at this at all or say, that's not. No, this is impressive. This is a type of move that until the 3 trades were made on Tuesday, I had serious doubts that Derek Falvey on that day would ever do it. Because he's made trades, he's made splash moves both on the open market and as far as free agent signings go. So, we knew he could do that. We knew he could trade top prospects. Petty, who was traded in spring training for Gray. But the one thing that we hadn't seen was what we saw yesterday, which was sending a lot of pretty decent prospects elsewhere for the immediate gratification of trying to win now, which I think people in this town across the board are starved for.
I think the two things to take away is they've bolstered their bullpen. They've given themselves much more better matchups in later innings. So obviously Jorge Lopez has kind of found his groove here with Baltimore, turned into a really nice season after being a failed starter. Michael Fulmer, same kind of thing, a guy who was the rookie of the year and then kind of fell off as a Tiger starter, turned into a really good reliever. And this Twins front office loves guys who throw sliders. I have no idea what the obsession of this. It's a good pitch, don't get me wrong. And if you throw it really well, it's a nasty wipeout pitch, and Michael Fulmer has one. This season, opponents are hitting just 159 against his slider, and he throws it more than any other pitch. So he's nasty. He's good. But I think it has set up themselves to have better opportunities in the later situations in a clutch playoff game to get themselves a win. I said yesterday they have bought themselves a win by selling these prospects. Look, if Mahle is able to go out there and give them 6-7 innings and go the third time through the order, I'm going to believe that when I see it. But now that when you get into a playoff game and it's 3-1, 4-2 tie game, you have three legitimate options in Fulmer, Lopez, and Duran that you can use at your disposal. I've kind of kept going back to this broken record of what the Brewers have done with their playoff pitching staffs over the last few years is they will pull a starter early. They will throw Josh Hader in the 4th or 5th if it's the middle of the order coming up. So now Rocco Baldelli and their pitching staff have that opportunity with three legitimate guys in their bullpen, and I like their chances to at least win a damn playoff game.
The obsession with sliders is kind of funny. I think it'd be funnier if the Twins, if they had like an eephus pitch obsession, or they're just looking for guys who can throw that Tony Fiore, a little 40. Yeah. Well, cutters used to be, I feel like Mariano Rivera, he had a lot of teams really interested in, we got to find guys who throw cutters. Like, well, he's just amazing at that one pitch. And if you aren't a master at it, then it's just a fastball that kind of sits belt high. But I digress. So the thing I like best about, I think, these trades yesterday is it eliminates the need, on paper anyways, to use crappy relief pitchers as often in close games. Mm-hmm. And if you look going into today's games, the Twins bullpen has racked up the 5th most innings of any bullpen in the entire league. And you'd say, okay, well, that's a great strategy if you have an awesome bullpen, and they don't. Their second best reliever on paper has been Emilio Pagan, basically, right? I mean, you could say that now that 4 months have passed, Griffin Jacks might be their second best reliever behind Duran, but the reality is they don't really have a defined second best reliever behind Duran. And now they have a second and a third best reliever, and then maybe Griffin Jacks kind of slides in as 4, and some of these guys that you've been rotating in and out. I mean, they've used how many hundreds of pitchers it seems like this season. You shouldn't need to use those guys. The Twins are obsessed with using 4+ innings of relief pitching every single night because they don't believe in, even with Sonny Gray, like they don't believe in going beyond 85 pitches, or if they get to 6 innings, it's basically a complete game for a starting pitcher. So the more you can just not have to use crappy relievers in close games, the more games you're going to win. It's very simple. And that's what they accomplished yesterday. They bring in 2 relievers who are good. It bumps out 2 relievers who are not good. They bring in a starting pitcher who's very good. And they still have some problems at the bottom end of their starting rotation, but it eliminates the need to use crappy pitchers. Now the Rays, you're going to look and say, but the Rays are, sort of a blueprint for teams. They lead the league in bullpen usage, but traditionally the Rays have had, for whatever reason, whether it's their own internal pipeline or them bringing guys on and salvaging their careers, they always have like 4 or 5 oddly lights out relief pitchers. And this season's no different. They have in their bullpen, they have 4 regular relievers with ERAs under 3, and one of them, Jason Adam, who's one of their 5 different closer by committee guys, has a 1.30 ERA and 11 strikeouts per 9. So it works for the Rays because they have an awesome bullpen that you can start bringing guys in the 5th or 6th. It doesn't work for the Twins, at least until now. And
I'm a little bit torn here because on one hand, I looked at this bullpen for an extended period and said, how's it so crappy? How did you not build, you're supposed to know pitching. How did you not build a bullpen that was at least more competitive? But where I give Falvey and the Twins a lot of credit is here. When's the last time that we said, and I mean, this is true of the Twins, but this is true of a lot of teams in this town. When's the last time that we said in season, here's exactly what you need? And it wasn't just this show. It was a lot of, it was obvious. You need at least a starter and 2 bullpen arms. And it happened. That is impressive. They went out and addressed directly what everyone knew. And I know that's sort of a no doubt. Well, of course they did. That's not true, though. I mean, there's been a lot of times where we've been like, you need this, and teams are like, oh, we'll be fine.
Yeah.
So I do think that it's not a great thing that the bullpen turned out to be as unreliable as it's been. I do think it's impressive that for the first time in forever in this town, the Twins brass made trades to actually what appears to be go for it as much as they possibly can.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, what were your expectations for before the trade deadline, before they added these three arms, what were your expectations for what if they would have just left the team sort of as is, or maybe they added like a Sergio Romo caliber reliever like they did in 2019, and they kind of rode it out for the rest of the year? What would their fate have been if they did that? And now, what do you think their fate will ultimately be?
Go ahead, Dave.
I don't think they probably back into the division. This division's crap, and I know Cleveland's right behind them with the game, and we've been saying for 3 months the White Sox are coming. They're going to wake up. I don't think they will. They might catch Cleveland. They could get hot, but I'm not buying anymore that the White Sox are going to all of a sudden now wake up and win like 50 of the remaining 70 games or whatever it is. If they did nothing, I don't feel really good about them going into the postseason. I just don't. I don't think that if they would have legitimately thrown the Caleb Thielbars, et cetera, in the late inning situation with only Joan Duran as your viable high leverage relieving option, I think they would have blown a lot more games. And they didn't have the starting pitching caliber to go deep into games. They don't believe their starters should go deep into games. So I would have probably thought that maybe they back into the playoffs, and by natural division winners, you get to host the playoff series in the wild card round because they'd have the third best record per se. But I wouldn't feel really good that they'd win a playoff game. Now I feel legitimately good that they can at least win a playoff game.
I don't like Cleveland, but the more I thought about this, and yes, Declan is right, the division is crap. But you know what? If they don't make a move, like let's say that they do go out and get, just a bullpen arm like Romo was in 2019, I think the vote of no confidence in that clubhouse is so high that they might have just collapsed. Like because I mean, you can't take away completely, especially in a professional sports season, which is just such a grind. I don't think that you can take away the human element of, we've sort of worked our asses off, but our pitching stinks and you did nothing. So I would not have been surprised if they had absolutely trended it to what they were essentially doing before the deadline and just gone in the tank and finished second or third. Mm-hmm. Because I can't imagine, like, if you're Correa, and I'm not saying he'd quit, but if you've been contributing and you're like, okay, you got to get us some help here, and they come back with, we got just Sergio Romo.
Yes.
I think that clubhouse collapses.
Yeah, let's talk about the human element here for a second, because it's and I'm as much of a baseball analytics guy as anyone the last 10 or 15 years in this town covering this team, but there is an unquantifiable thing, and you saw it with the idiot Red Sox in 2004, right? And you've seen it with, I think, certain Twins teams the other way, where there's this propensity to wilt, regardless of the roster and the manager. They just, I don't know, they look at the Yankees, and there's a human element thing there that sometimes the Yankees are just better and they win because it's baseball, but other times over the course of 20 years, there's a certain thing about the Twins that just, I don't know if they could believe they can beat the Yankees. So if you would have told the Twins directly or indirectly, hey, nice job getting to 5 or 6 games over 500 before the trade deadline, but we don't really believe in you, and we don't want to mortgage the future for this current team. Well, I'm not saying that Carlos Correa is going to become unprofessional. I still think he's a leader. I think he's going to go about his business, and ultimately he's playing for a contract that's more secure long term. But guess what? The last 2 months of the year, he's probably a little less focused on being the best leader he can be for everyone else in that clubhouse, and a little more focused on getting his numbers and where he might sign a new contract in November, right? So now, is that the difference between 5 wins? It's so hard to quantify, but telling a clubhouse that you don't. Now, there was a time, I think, in 2017 where they kind of told the clubhouse, we don't believe in you, and it had the opposite effect, and they said, bleep you, led by Brian Dozier, the verbal jabs at the front office, and they went on a run. So it can have the effect both ways, but I think this team, considering the fact they've played like 6 games below 500, maybe even, it might even be 7 games below 500 since the last week in May, they needed to be told by the front office, hey, we got you guys. We believe in this thing. We're gonna mortgage some of the future, even though they didn't really mortgage that much of the future. They only traded 1 top 15 prospect. And we're gonna give you guys the ammunition you need, and we're gonna help fix the pitching here. So yeah, does it result in 5 extra? It's so hard to quantify, but I agree with you, Judd. I think it matters for sure.
It feels like it makes you competitive, though. And just as a starting point, players and fans care about that. Like when you are
The fan angle too. Like, how many times can you tell the fans,
Yep.
sorry, or just not?
Well, and I mean,
not going to be aggressive here.
I continually hear Emilio Pagan's statistics and advanced metrics like brought up as far as, he's actually doing pretty well here. And at some point in time, you're just like, no, it's that, like it has to become important what you're seeing. And I think that's important to players too. Like at some point, I'm sure you can go to Correa and players and be like, well, look at the spin rate here. I mean, and Correa loves that stuff. But when you're getting hammered continually, and when like every time the guy jogs in from the bullpen, it's baseball Russian roulette.
Yeah.
That's a problem. So, yeah, I really do believe that what the Twins did on Tuesday is a major step towards taking themselves seriously. And I'm with both of you guys in the prospect thing. You know what? You didn't touch your roster. You didn't touch Miranda. Quite frankly, you didn't touch a top 5 prospect. I think what they did was really well done.
Yep. And just one more note on this, just from a sort of a fan and intangible perspective. For basically 20 years, Twins ownership and the Twins front office has been saying to good teams, and I'll leave it to the Target Field era. So 2010, because they did make the trade for Shannon Stewart in 2003, and that helped vault them. But even like 2006, that was one of the greatest teams in Twins history. And I don't remember that they had a chance to maybe add a bat to the middle of the lineup or another starting pitcher to, at the time, a healthy Francisco Liriano before he blew the elbow out in Johan Santana, and they just kind of let it ride. Yep. And then they get to Target Field and they have that awesome like 95 win team in 2010, and they said, okay, well, Cliff Lee's a little rich for our blood, but we'll go get Matt Capps. And Matt Capps was fine. People rag on Matt Capps, but they traded Wilson Ramos for Matt Capps, and Capps wasn't the difference in the division. He didn't do anything in the Yankees playoff series. 2019 rolls around. It's a 100 win team that was the greatest power hitting team in the history of Major League Baseball, and they said, we like you. We don't love you. We'll bring in Sergio Romo and a banged-up Sam Dyson who pitched for about 5 seconds and then was on the injured list the rest of the year. So for them to tell the team and for them to tell the fans, hey, whether this works out or not, we're going to be aggressive at the deadline, more aggressive than we've been in the 13 years at Target Field, and more aggressive than we've been basically since the Twins rose from the dead in 2001 from contraction. And for that, I think they should be applauded. Yep. This is the absolute right thing to do for the team and for the fans that have been clamoring for this for basically 2 decades.
This also shows a very important thing, and 5+ years in, I think it's the maturation of Falvey as an executive, and here's why. I understand that having a deep system and developing prospects is incredibly important, okay? So I'm not putting that down for 1 second. But I think where executives mature, and when they're young, they don't necessarily do this, but they start to realize a lot of times time is of the essence, is this. Expectation of success as opposed to pouncing. Like what the Twins did on Tuesday is pouncing. My guess is this. They started April saying, we finished in last place in 2021. We're okay, but we're not great. Let's see where things go, right? And like the bullpen's not great. Okay, but we're not great necessarily. And as the season unfolds, you're like, okay, there's opportunity here. And it is not the Twins' fault that the division stinks. Like it's not like, well, you guys should have known the division would stink. Okay, that's surprising. Pleasant surprise, right? So I think the difference now is at his age and with his experience that Falvey and the entire Twins brass pounced on an opportunity. What drives me crazy is when prospects are used as expectation of, well, I mean, you just wait 4 years, right? And it felt like in 19, that's what we got. Very much, this is going to go for a long time. You don't get this. I mean, keep in mind, there was no doubt the 2010 Twins thought the 2011, 12, and 13 Twins would be good. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think they foresaw we're going to fall off a bleeping cliff. Let's go for it. Like, if you went back now,
we can't trade Aaron Hicks. He's gonna help us in 2012.
Exactly. But I mean, if you think about that now, if Terry could go back, right, and if you told Terry, hey, dude, it ain't going to go well, but you can go for it right now. totally different. So
they could have landed Cliff Lee, I think, for Aaron Hicks plus a couple others, and they balked at Aaron Hicks from what I had always heard. And in retrospect, that looks ridiculous.
Yes, especially when you consider what happened. Mm-hmm. That's the thing.
And again, if Spencer Steer turns out to be a multi-time All-Star, I don't care. They don't have to have Spencer Steer and some of these pitching prospects be busts for the idea of this trade to be the correct idea. You're looking. This is kind of a once in a 10 years chance, even though they're playing at an 84 win pace right now, so it's not like they're lighting it up. But you don't, how often are you going to get a relatively healthy Byron Buxton, and fingers crossed on the knee exams this week? Yeah. Carlos Correa in his prime on your team. He can opt out after the season. Mm-hmm. Luis Arraez probably having the peak hitting season of his career, on pace to win the batting title, 400 on base percentage. He's just probably at his peak. And Jose Miranda clicking and red hot like this. There's no guarantees that he is like this in 2 years. We don't know, but he's hot right now. Right, all these things clicking. Sonny Gray, not going to be around in 5 years from now. So it's just, who cares what Spencer Steer is going to be in 5 years from now? I want to help this team right here win more games.
And it's sort of sad, but while the mission of Score North is for the Vikings to very much win a Super Bowl, the really sad thing is the starting point for the Twins is to win a playoff game.
Oh.
Like that, that streak is among the most embarrassing ever in sports.
Yep.
If you can just break that streak, it is. I mean, think about it. 18 baseball games consecutively lost in the most important time of year
by a team, the Twins, that was a 90 and 100 win team for almost all of those games. Yeah. So just so you guys know, too, on Flagrant Howls with Kyle Teige, we have set the Wolves bar at, we want a 50-win season. They haven't won 50 games in a season since 2003, 2004. They've only done it 4 times in the 32 years of franchise history. So eventually we would like championships, but sometimes you have to meet the team where they're at. And the Timberwolves are sort of, they won 46 games last year. I think they won 47 with Jimmy Butler. So let's get to the first step, which is win 50 games.
It's not
and
that
then
much.
we can hunt for championships.
That's a very fair ask.
And for the Twins, let's get to the first step, which is win a game. And then maybe we can even alter the expectation in October. If they can win a game, then okay, now what's the new goal? Maybe it's win a series. And then maybe next year it's get to the ALCS or something. But we got to meet these teams where they're at sometimes.
Best of 3-2, win game 1. I don't want this puppy at 19. Like, I want game 1. I want to end it
at
game 1.
If it gets to 20, oh my God, dude. If they lose, if they just get swept out, it gets to 20.
Look at Declan. Look at the look on Declan's face. You look like you're about to throw
I'm going to
up.
be apoplectic. Yeah, I will. I will have to. I might have to take time off just to recharge of my anger and go on like a sabbatical of somewhere to some place just so I can clear my head.
I think they got it this time. I think it sets up. Now, if Buxton has to have season-ending knee surgery or something, then they can still win the division probably, and they could still. It's baseball. You can still win a game. I mean, hell, didn't the Nationals win a World Series without Juan Soto a few years ago? Wasn't he hurt? Or am I thinking of?
I don't remember if he was hurt. I didn't think so.
Or am I thinking? Did the Braves win one? One of those National League teams won a World Series without their Acuna. Acuna was
out last year. Yeah, he tore his knee up.
See? So it can be done. You can win a game. These teams are winning World Series, for God's sakes, without their star players.
Yes.
So one last Twins thing to tie up here in just a second, but a shout-out to our friends. The official dog food of Mackey and Judd is Nutrisource. And you'll see on the YouTube channel here a video of a very excited Maya Mackey here. She is our 3-year-old Chihuahua Terrier mix. And, boy, she just... Sometimes I'll scoop, so maybe Mom will take her out in the morning, and then Dad will scoop her a little Nutrisource. Oh. And she'll just sprint upstairs. She'll blow right by Dad, won't even say hi, and just in about 3.5 seconds, she'll just plow her Nutrisource because she loves it. She loves it. How's Stella doing with her first couple batches of Nutrisource?
She's doing so good that the wake-up call today came at 5:45. 5:45 in the morning.
She doesn't sleep. She waits for Nutrisource.
She waits for Nutrisource and the treats that she gets when she goes outside. Yeah, I was awoken by 2 definitive barks saying, "Get up and feed me my Nutrisource right bleeping now, Dad." I'm going to tell you, She runs the house, which is fine, but the Nutrisource has become definitely the food now of Stella Zolgan.
NutrisourcePetFoods.com to find a retailer near you. NutrisourcePetFoods.com. A shout out to our friends at Federated Mutual Insurance Company. They've been around for over 100 years helping businesses maximize their level of success through risk management tools and resources. And Federated's corporate culture is grounded in equity, integrity, teamwork, and respect. They take those 4 cornerstones to your business. And you can find out more about how they can help you at federatedinsurance.com, where it's our business to protect yours. So one last thing here, we'll get to write that down, predictions, but very quietly yesterday, through all of the trades and the roster moves and everything, in order to make room for the new acquisitions, one of the moves the Twins made was to put Miguel Sano not just on the injured list, where he was, but the 60-day injured list, which effectively, if you start to do the math, ends his season, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
he might need surgery, they said.
Okay.
There's a chance that
But he already had surgery, so he's going to get the other surgery?
It didn't go well, I guess. It didn't take.
So he did the short-term surgery.
Yes.
But then he tweaked his knee.
Correct. And
in a minor league game.
Yeah, and Provis talked about it on the broadcast last night that there's a chance, I think, that he might need surgery again. So
that's probably a wrap on his. I mean, the only way is if somehow his knee starts to feel good enough. But they didn't. I think if they didn't make all these moves, they probably would have given him some time to see how it felt. But it was like, oh, we need a roster spot. Let's just move him to the 60-day. They didn't even give him a chance. I guess what I'm saying is, I don't question the injury by any means. I'm saying if they had more of a runway if they didn't add 3 pitchers, or if they had some other obvious candidates to DFA or put on the 60-day injured list, they would have given him more time to see how he feels in 2 weeks. But they just decided, you know what, enough's enough. He's never healthy. When he's healthy, he's not productive.
Right.
The 3 years of his peak prime, ages 27, 28, 29, and he's hitting 207 with a league average OPS and below average defense.
Right.
So how will you, if this is the end of Miguel Sano's Twins career, and we can do a deeper dive at the end of the season on this when he's officially gone, but how are you going to remember the 8 years of Miguel Sano?
Incredible disappointment. When you consider the expectations, and these are 2 very different players and stories, okay? But when you consider the fact that Sano and Buxton were coming up at the same time and the expectations for those 2, and the Buxton thing is just sad. And by the way, he's trying hard to play, and when he plays, he can be great. Sano, though, will always be, and I know he made at least one All-Star appearance. I know that there were years where he certainly showed great power. But overall, when you consider the expected productivity with what you got, and when you look at the self-inflicted wounds, which are showing up in bad shape, being sent down in June of one season, not because you're hurt, but because you are so grossly out of shape, they have to send you to Florida. I don't know technically if the word bust applies to a guy who played as long as he did with the Twins and generated as much power as he did. But in the back of my mind, it's bust. And it is an incredible disappointment that he did not capitalize on what clearly was a fantastic opportunity.
I'm a little split because on one hand, to Judd's point, he still was able to play a good amount of games. He racked up a ton of home runs. He did make an all-star game. That's great. But at the end of the day, I think you can call him a bust. I mean, this guy was supposed to be a franchise-saving, altering player. And yes, cautionary tale of baseball prospects, right? Miguel Sano. It's honestly a prime example of cautionary tale. Don't always buy into the hype. I mean, if Kirill Kaprizov came to the Wild over from the KHL and just stunk, and just wasn't the player he was not a good worker, did not score the goals, we'd be saying massive bust. And Kirill, by the way, was only a 5th-round pick, but the hype was obviously real. The hype was obviously real for Miguel Sano, too, and he couldn't stay on the field. And after a very, honestly, promising rookie campaign when he got called up halfway through that 2015 season, I think we all were saying, oh, my God, this is for real. Like, the guy has power, the guy's drawing walks, he's playing at least some pretty decent defense. And then after that, it just never was consistent. I think you can call him a bust. It's a bust.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at what the expectation was as you followed his minor league career and then his rookie season, where he looked like the second coming of Miguel Cabrera, opposite field,
right.
Contact, everything average. and where he sort of landed 8 years later, there's a huge gap between expectation and where he's at. Now, on the flip side, he's actually going to finish his Twins career third among, if you take out the Washington Senators, if you just look at Twins history, third highest slugging percentage in Twins history. Harmon Killebrew, Justin Morneau, Miguel Sano, just above Kent Hrbek, Shane Mack, one of the most underrated Twins of all time.
Rule 5 guy,
Shout out
too.
to Shane Mack. So, but that was kind of his only redeeming quality as a player. He hit a bunch of home runs when he was healthy, in an era where home runs are flying out of ballparks at an unprecedented rate. So, yes, he was great at that one thing, that one tool of the 5, but almost everything else was a train wreck with him, including just the fact that he never really kept himself in peak physical condition. Every other year or more, it was Miguel Sano lost 20 pounds, 30 pounds. And he's like, dude, be a professional. Why are you gaining 30 pounds? I get that the food's free back there and it's amazing, the spreads, but dude, you have a 12-year window in your life to capitalize here and to make as much money as possible and to play this game, and then you can go get as fat as you want after you're 35 years old and retired. Look at all the other baseball players. Football players get skinny after they retire. Baseball players balloon, and that can be you. It'll be great, but I'm just going to remember him as a disappointment on the field in terms of his inability to stay healthy and to stay in shape, and he didn't live up to expectations. Sorry.
I think it's very fair to say this. He didn't take it seriously. Like, he had talent, for sure. But when you think of, and yes, it was the previous regime, and yes, it was a different time. But the real red flag at first, because Dex is exactly right. He came up and he was marvelous. Pitch selection, he was taking pitches, he was great. But when you think about the fact that the previous regime moved him to right field now, like, that is such a red flag, because they basically said, well, he'll stay in shape there, right? No. And he'll be bad out there.
He's going to get a few more steps walking out to right field.
But I mean, can you imagine if this guy had applied himself completely? He could have stayed at third base, where he would have, market value-wise, would have skyrocketed if he had stayed at third base. So I think the sad thing is, and I'm sure that there will be some on Twitter that disagree and are very upset, but the sad thing is he never took it as seriously as he should have.
So Miguel Sano, Twins career, probably over. If you missed our just immediate reaction to the Twins trade deadline yesterday, you can find that on the Score North YouTube channel, on the Mackey and Judd podcast feed. We're going to take a break for a second here and come back with Write That Down predictions and an accountability session. Mackey and Judd.